Uda, Uda, you know the vibe. Salute to everybody that's been subscribing to the channel. I can't say more about y'all love. I appreciate all of y'all love to our channel. Subscribe to the channel right now if you have not and you are new to our channel. You know what it is, what we say on the block. Everybody's welcome here on the block. Subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bells on, and make sure that you're notified when we drop new content. This is part 2, Young Pharaoh interview with Leon Kennedy. Check it out.
I've been exposed to every drug that there ever was before it came out to the public. And yet, I've never done drugs. And people are amazed. And I say, well, because my mind, I always wanted to keep my mind because I always wanted to be successful. So quite frankly, I was afraid to do drugs. I didn't want to do that because I wanted to be successful. And you would think, for going back to my early days, because of being a disc jockey, I knew Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and so many other people that died so young. David Ruffin, good friend, we used to go horseback riding. So many people that died so tragically because of drugs. And it seems to me that any young person that wanted to be successful in the music business, it seems like the first thing they would do is 101 for success is don't do drugs,
right?
Because it's taken so many people out. And yet people fall into the same pattern. When I go out on the college tours or go to high schools, I always tell people the best way to stop is to never start.
That's right.
You know, to have the strength to just not start. Just say, I'm not doing that. I'm not into that. I want to be something. I want to make something out of my life. So for the younger people that are watching this, what would you say to them?
I would say what I say to myself. And, you know, I'm 27 now, so I'm still technically young. So I'll say I've been younger. I've done things young people do. I've drunk, smoked. I've just never done crazy narcotic drugs because, you know, my past lifestyle, I can see what it's doing to people. So I know not to do that. And what I would say to young people is power, right? We all want power. So let power be your motivating force because it'll give you that extra oomph to do good. Don't look at not doing drugs as something that people just say because it's cool and it's mature things your parents should do. Look at not doing drugs because if you do drugs, you literally destroy the cells in your brain, you destroy the neurons in your brain, you alter your spirit, you open yourself up to interdimensional influence by other intelligences, what we call possession, and you literally take away your power and give it to parasitic entities, whether they be human or non-human, who want it. So if nothing else motivates you, the preservation of your own power should motivate you. So I don't care if you're 5, 15, 25. I'm telling you not to do drugs because it would be a lower level of suicide. If we were fighting, you wouldn't punch yourself in the face because now you're just helping me take away your power because there's only so many punches you could take anyway. So why would you help me damage you? So if we know in life, once again, the point of life is self-preservation, preserve your power because your power aids in the ability for you to preserve yourself. So we've all been young, and I want to be clear on here because we all have our own opinions. I don't believe anything that's natural to be considered a drug. If it's weed, if it's a mushroom, if it grows naturally, I'm not talking about that. I wouldn't suggest that you do it, but I want to be clear on what I'm talking about. I'm speaking on things that people make in laboratories and place them on the street for you to consume. And if you are foolish enough to take something that you had no part in its creation, which means you have no knowledge of the true effects that you're finna cause to yourself, then you already relieved yourself of your own power. So don't do drugs.
And I love what you said, Pharaoh. I really love the way you laid that out. And I would add one other layer to those that are listening, and that is we know that there are other forces behind a lot of the drugs that have been put out, and they're making billions and billions of dollars. So in street terms, why would you let somebody else pimp you? You know, why be pimped?
Exactly.
You know, I've lived in LA since 1971, and Once upon a time, you could go into Compton or East LA and many other areas, South Central, many areas that might be problematic to go into now were once upon a time lovely areas until the drug war and the gang wars escalated. So now I want to ask you about Ricky Ross, not Ricky Ross, the rapper, but Rick Ross, the one that allegedly brought crack into the streets of Los Angeles. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, and I want to say I was honored to be afforded the opportunity to actually do an interview with Rick Ross.
Okay.
So, you know, I have a lot of appreciation for him. And I was able to actually, to what technology allowed at that level to, you know, get some of that good energy. And what I will say is a lot of good people take falls for a lot of bad people. And whether people look at Rick Ross as he was just another drug dealer or whatever, Rick Ross chose a lifestyle that he felt would feed himself and his family. And we have to look at that situation as two wrongs don't make a right, but let's see who even set that lifestyle up. So we have to actually pay attention to the agenda and why the story of Rick Ross is actually so important. To me, the story of Rick Ross is so important is because Rick Ross represents the power structure of these elite entities or people who manipulate the world and pull these strings. They introduce lifestyles that are harmful to the partaker of the lifestyle, but beneficial to them being the provider. In this particular instance, it would be drugs. You know that drugs, particularly cocaine, in this particular instance was used to fund not just wars like the Vietnam War, but the silent wars that nobody talks about, conducted by the government, the CIA, etc. And Rick Ross simply is not only the fall guy, he's the cover guy, because we don't hear these stories, because instead of saying, hey, why did he go to jail? This is sad, let's talk about that. We glorify being drug dealers and we say, I want to be just like that. And they're going to jail for 20, 25 years, not saying that's what he did, but just throwing a limit out there. If going to jail for 20 to 25 years is in comparison with my belief system not as bad as having temporary pleasure, all of the girls, all of the jewelry, all of the money, then it's worth it. A 5 year of hot summers is worth 25 years of cold ones in the cell. So when I look at the story of Rick Ross, I'm looking at a repetitive tactic that people have to become aware of to, you know, be able to sidestep. And Rick Ross, throughout all of the years, what I admire about him is he was able to keep his mind strong. Because I couldn't imagine, well, I could imagine, because I have years for a firearm that wasn't mine, so let me not say that. But I could even imagine on a greater scale going to jail for a lifestyle that was provided to me by my own government.
With Rick, his story is so intriguing. All of Hollywood wanted to do his story. And for some reason, he trusted me. So when he got out of prison, he came over to the house and we had meetings about the script and his story and so on and so forth. I really wanted to do it. For some reason, the deal couldn't be worked out at the studio, so it wasn't done. But it's an intriguing story. It's a story that everybody should see, because the main part of that story is Rick went and did the time.
Correct.
The big boys, the ones in the power structure pulling the strings and supplying the drugs, never did a day of time.
Exactly.
So that's a story that still should be shared. And that leads me into this phenomenon that's been going on for about 20 years now, privatized prisons. I want to hear your comments on that.
Privatized prisons are, you know, the blatant evidence that we all should look at to say that somebody has an interest in us being incarcerated. So when it comes to privatized prisons, outside of tracing them or following the money or the paper trail to who owns them, we should be actually questioning, why do they exist? And when you compare today's society to ancient societies, we don't really see the huge number of prisons, if any prisons, because we encourage moral behavior. Criminal behavior was considered a form of mental illness, because why would you even ponder those thoughts? to commit such an act. So private prisons, once again, are like a double-edged sword, and they let us know that somebody not only has an invested interest in us being incarcerated, but they have an invested interest in keeping our mental health so low and keeping our environment so stressful that we commit behaviors that if we were in our right state of mind, we would never even ponder. And when it comes to the private prison industrial complex, these big corporate entities in America, whether they be passed down generationally, whether they have been here since 1776, 1871, 1872, these key dates in history, we have to understand that these people are socially engineering our own destruction for their profit. And these private prisons have been owned, backed by not only domestic entities, but foreign entities like communism, Israel, and others. So the private prison industrial complex is just as dangerous as the military industrial complex, not just because of its incentive or its purpose, but because we are not aware of how many different entities and parties, not even domestically grown, are involved in such a structure. So the private prison industrial complex is something that the American public not only took too long to be worried about, but should actually research it and use it as a template to ask themselves, how many people are really out to get me? How many people are really invested in chaos? How many people are benefiting from chaos? And if you ask yourself that question, you'll start to look at the police a little bit different. You'll start to look at the courtrooms a little bit different. You'll start to look at the government a little bit different. Not to say all of them should be thrown in the garbage, but you'll at least ponder the thought or the possibility of the reality and the fact that there is a want for you to commit crime. There is a want for you to live in poverty. There is a want for you to have toxic thoughts so that you can commit actions which puts you in one of these prisons so that we can make $1. So if nothing else,
so that someone else can make $1 off of you.
Someone else can make a couple dollars off a couple of us. And with that being said, if nothing else in your mind clicks, the one thing that will click is there is somebody out there who is waiting on your downfall, and you should do everything in your power